For each, register of our humanity, there are people who are competent to help us to live well. So you think about like our physical health. We can consult doctors and nurses. We can consult dietitians and physical therapists. We can consult any number of professionals for whom, like that's their competence. And so we want to look to those people to help us without becoming so consumed with the fixing of those problems that our desire to fix the problem becomes in turn a distraction, right? So like, I've been using the bump example. I had, an initial little kind of stitches, and then I had a first surgery, and then I had a second surgery. Now it's like my head's not flat, obviously. I could have had any number of further surgeries, but it's each time there's swelling, and you have to wait to see if it will recover better. And this plastic surgeon and that plastic surgeon, and also I'm a religious, and we don't have the money to pay for it if it's out of network. So dot dot dot. It's the type of thing where it's like, do I have a dent in my head? Yes. Is it the biggest deal in the world? No. Did it take me some time to come to that realization? Yes. But at this stage of the game, like this kind of imperfection in the physical order doesn't pose an obstacle to perfection in the spiritual order, because we can take everything from the lower order and make of it fodder for a higher order type of flourishing. So it's like, yeah, here's this obstacle. I want to address this obstacle in the ways that lie available to me, but God will never permit me to be tested beyond my strength, right? And then, all right, ratcheting up to the next level, thinking about the emotional and the psychological, there are people who are competent in those matters. And we think about psychologists and psychiatrists and therapists and counselors and whomever else. And we want to work with them so as to address certain obstacles which might lie in our way. Now, there are greater obstacles and lesser obstacles. And we don't want to say, like, I need to address every possible obstacle, because every human being is going to encounter some difficulty in this realm. But there's a lot that we can kind of take in stride, or there's at least some that we can take in stride. But if I become so fixated on those problems of an emotional and psychological nature that I have to kind of consult or, like seek somebody else with greater competence in those matters so as to navigate them, right? Then there's a kind of worry that then that becomes the goal, then that becomes the end of my life, because we want to be able to, again, like live in the spiritual order, look on those problems and say simply and kind of humbly, like, I don't really know what's going on. It seems like this could be going better. I'm going to make the best use of those people, to whom I have access. But I'm also going to be mindful of the fact that this isn't the whole of my life, right? And I don't want to make of this, in stressing over it, in obsessing over it, a further obstacle, as it were, to what matters. So I think that, yeah, I know like all of these formulations are somewhat imperfect, and I am conscious of the fact that, if left unsaid, some clarification might go unmentioned and leave people potentially confused. But I think the big thing is to recognize a kind of competence for each register. Like, we're competent for our lives. God has placed our lives in our hand. But sometimes he has it that we rely upon others to help us, right? Because we ourselves are somewhat compromised in our competence, or somewhat untrained in our competence. So we rely on others to help us to address those things in each register of our human life, navigate the various problems, but ultimately unto an end, which is, the vision of God in heaven, which is our full flourishing, which can incorporate all the lower kind of order goods in their turn.
Yeah, there's this. I've experienced this sort of what kind of like dualistic phenomena of how people approach seeking help, or these seeking competent people to help, especially with mental health. And the I guess on the one hand, this sort of I guess I would say like overuse, over reliance, where it's kind of like you're a thing to have a therapist or a counselor or whatever it might be. Like, it's just part of like everyday life, and that like it should be not that it is part of everyday life, but that it ought, like life ought to have these pieces to it. Life kind of seems like it just needs a counselor, and I'm just going to go through counselors and that sort of thing, like an over reliance and kind of not a flippancy, but a sort of casual approach to seeking out, that sort of help. Now, when I say that, I don't want to say that people shouldn't have therapists or counselors or psychiatrists, but I do think that it is when we seek, just like when we seek out a doctor, like an MD for help with a physical ailment, so too with like the mental, that this is, it's a serious thing. It's not just oh, this is just part of what I do, and that sort of thing. It's, we're seeking to become more healthy. But the other side of it too is sometimes I think there's a great reticence to seek out help, to find somebody to talk to or that sort of thing. And I think that can be unhelpful too, in the sense of like, sometimes it is just good to have somebody to talk to who's a professional, who has competency, as you were saying, Father Gregory, in these areas, so as to seek some healthy movement in these areas. And I think what you were saying too really stands out to me. It was like, what is the goal? What is the goal here? Like, what are we after with respect to like a sound anthropological understanding from how we understand the truth of the human person with respect to our mental health? And I think that's what you were saying already, to be able to remove obstacles from our pursuit of Christ.
Father Jacob-Bertrand, would you say that you're optimistic about this subscription appeal?
No.
Would you say that you're optimistic about anything?
No.
Well, I am. Folks, go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We greatly appreciate it. Cheers.